Hello, this is Corey Colonna, the Executive Director of Housing and Residential Life at Cal State Long Beach. This is one of our several videos to just sort of help families and students prepare for coming to campus and living with us for the fall 23 and spring 24 academic year. So happy to have you with us. So here, this little section is just some highlights for 23-24, and then a little bit of advice that we just generally like to share with parents and guardians and such, as we know that there's some nervousness of leaving students at a new space. And we're hoping that we can help alleviate some of those concerns and just make you all feel a little bit better. So first, I want to just hit up some important dates. So as you already know, move-in day is August 18th and 19th. Beach days, which is really our orientation in a sense to housing and to the university that housing does for our students. It starts on the 18th for those who move in on the 18th. They'll have their floor meetings and stuff that night. Those who move in on the 19th, they'll have floor meetings and stuff on the 19th. But then after that, we have a lot of really intentional programs to allow students to get to know each other. We'll have roommate agreements where students sit down with their roommates and their RAs and they fill out some information. So, you know, people are setting expectations for themselves. And then we have some mandatory and really important trainings that need to happen, including trainings related to alcohol and other drugs and sexual assault prevention, which you know are mandated by the nation from the federal government to provide to students who live in housing. So those will be really important. So I have had people ask the question, "Oh, I move in on Friday. Do I need to be there that first weekend?" The answer is yes, absolutely. Not only do you need to be there because of the programmatic elements, but this is the time where people really start to connect with each other. First day of classes is on Tuesday. And then I do mention a couple other things. So Labor Day, campus is closed. Housing, of course, stays open. Dining is open on that day. But to note that it's generally a fairly lonely weekend, so it's something to consider if going home for that time might be appropriate. But generally, I want people to stay for weekends, but this is one you might want to consider. And then November 20th to 26th is fall break / Thanksgiving, similar to the Labor Day with a slight change. Residence halls remain open, but with limited service, and the limited service really is that the dining halls are closed. And so that's not factored into people's meal plans and such. But if a student needs to stay, they would need to be thinking about, you know, ordering out or figuring out how they would feed themselves for those days. And then finals period starts December 12th and it ends on the 18th. The 18th, generally, the last day almost always is all graduate students finals. I can't speak of that with super confidence because I don't really involve myself a lot with the academic side of things, but the halls will close on the 18th at 11 a.m. And so students will need to vacate their housing on that day, by that day. Certainly students can go home earlier if their finals are done, but we want to make sure that people have that date in their minds. And so I'm mentioning it now. Spring semester, again, very similar. Move-in for spring semester is January 21st. The first day of classes is just the next day. There's no need for an orientation period like there was in the fall. Spring break, again, is like the fall break / Thanksgiving break. Their residence halls remain open, but with limited service, and dining halls are closed. And then the spring semester finals period, May 13th to 17th, and the move out day is the next day on the 18th at 11 a.m. So you want to make sure you plan for that. There aren't a lot of exceptions for students to be able to stay beyond that. That's actually literally what they're contracted to be able to stay till. But we do have some exceptions. Graduating seniors, which are very, very few because we don't really have a lot of upperclassmen housing. But then we have some students that might be working for our beach shops or working for commencement or helping to run our cultural graduations, those kind of things. So those people would have an exception to stay a little bit later, but everyone, absolutely everyone needs to be out at 11 a.m. on that May 24th. So important for people to know. Sorry, I highlighted that in my next slide. Just again, the May 18th is going to be the case for most people. And so people want to plan for that. If you're coming from far away, you want to think about your flights and stuff. So that would be an appropriate time. So I want to just say to folks that there is always help available for students. I think I said this in the previous video. I might say it in the next one because I can't emphasize it enough. There is nothing, no challenge on this campus that a student should need to go through completely on their own. And so really important for parents and for students is to learn how to access those resources. And I wanted to say they don't have to know all of this because they can always ask an RA, they can always ask a staff member, but there are some really great resources and you can check those out if you'd like to. Just Google CSULB Beach Wellness. You can see Be Well is in the title there. This is a great resource, and really it's talking about all sorts of well-being. So there's mental health in particular, which I'm going to speak a little about, but there's also resources on our rec center and just other wonderful options for students. But as we know, it can be a stressful time. Adolescence and early adulthood is a stressful time in general. Put in there a new environment, put in there being a little bit away from home potentially, and then just the rigor of college courses. So it can be a stressful time, and sometimes people need some extra help. There are just some wonderful resources for people that are available to them. New this year is the Beach Crisis Text Line. And again, you can click on this and be able to see how to access it, but it's really simple. There are phone numbers and hotlines. Our counseling center actually is open in a way 24/7. So a student could call the counseling line. They would talk with someone in the counseling office up until 5 o'clock. But then after that, they call that number and it actually transfers to mental health professionals that are off campus, like a call center. And so students can use that resource at any time. Again, we want students to know what's available. We want you to know what's available and to be able to explore that to best support the student. Again, I mentioned for our team, we are here for you and all of our students. Our office is Monday to Friday, 8 to 5 p.m. Email is housing@csulb.edu. Really, I can't emphasize enough, that's the best email. There are times where someone sends an email directly to me. I might be in meetings all day long. Not uncommon, unfortunately, just the world that we live in. But if you send it to the housing email, they can direct it to me. If I'm not available, they can direct it to someone else, and you're likely to get a faster response. Of course, we hit some high volume times with emails at the beginning of the semester, at times of applications, but for the most part, we will triage those emails daily, and they'll be sent off to people to respond as best as possible. The phone number for our office is right there on the screen. We also encourage people to have the UPD phone number. So really after that 5 o'clock, if there's an emergency and they need help, they can call the UPD number, and the UPD will be able to contact whoever on our team is on call to be able to respond. So that's another option. Students, when they get here, will also have an on-call number that will be given to them, but it's by area. So I didn't place it here because it's not the same for every group of students, but they'll be able to get that information when they move in. I'm going to pause for a second, and I feel like maybe I might have said this in the other video, but it was brought to my attention again. It is so very, very, very important that students put in to their, and through single sign-on, which is the where they do all their applications, where they can get all their information, their emergency cell phone number. We hope that we never have to use it. In fact, as I think about it, I think it's almost been exclusively just tests that I've received over that emergency system, but it is the way that the university would to reach out to students in an emergency. And we, for whatever reason, it's not mandatory that students put that information in. Maybe it's about, if there's a cost for text messaging or something, but we really, really want to highly encourage that. Again, God forbid we'd have a natural disaster or some other concern. We would want to be able to communicate to students effectively and quickly. So please make sure that they do that. And again, they do that through the single sign-on, which I think students generally refer to as my CSULB. It's single sign-on is what the admins call, but it's all the same. Some parental advice. So I've been doing this for about 22 years. I remember when I first started and I had some parents ask me questions, and I was like 22 years old myself, and was like, yikes, I don't know how I can give parental advice. But having done this for a while, I've seen Some parents make really good decisions that have been really helpful for their students, and sometimes parents may be making decisions that actually were counterproductive. And so please take this with a grain of salt and just consider some of these things as you think about what your role might be as a parent or a guardian or a family member in, in the university experience for your student. So first, trust in a strong foundation that you've built for them. With your support and love, they will grow in new ways and create a unique and fulfilling experience. You've done your job. You're not done. Of course, parents are never done, but you have done a really good job to get them ready for this. So trust that they know that. Remind them that you care for them and that you support them. Those are really important things. But I want you to feel that if you've done a good job and you have a strong relationship with that student, that they're going to feel supported and be in a good space. Encourage your students to get involved in something. And it says literally anything on campus. Those experiences are invaluable. I cannot emphasize this enough. There is this sense that sometimes parents and students will have where they'll say, oh, I just want to ease in, so I'm not going to get involved right away. That is completely counterproductive. So what all the research has done, and they've done a gazillion studies on this particular topic, but students who get involved and engaged in clubs and organizations and things they're passionate about from day one have a better GPA, more likely to graduate in 4 years, more likely to feel supported and connected to campus. And that's what we want. That's the best thing for the student. So I know our students often have other commitments. They might work, they might have other things, but I really want you to encourage your student to get involved. And I'm going to say get involved with more than one, maybe 2, maybe 3 things, because sometimes you're like, oh, I really am interested in this. And then when you go to the first club meeting, you're like, not really my thing. So we want people to have those backups, and getting involved from day one is just such an important way to really experience the college life and do well. No, so allow the student to make mistakes and grow from it. This is pre-adulthood, right? It's the beginning of adulthood, and we need students to be able to make decisions. And sometimes they're going to make great ones, and they're going to grow from that. And sometimes they're going to make big mistakes, and sometimes they're going to make little mistakes, and those things also help them grow. So allow them to do that. One of the jobs that we have in housing and with our university is to also make sure students know and understand the impact and the weight of their decisions. Some of the decisions they make, if they're poor ones, there are going to be consequences. That's, again, part of the real world. That's a part of being an adult. And so this is that time. And while a conduct response may seem like a big deal now, it's much better for them to learn in an environment where learning is at our core than it would be for them to learn out in the quote unquote real world. So allow them to grow and make decisions on their own. Support, this is related, support and empower students to address issues and utilize resources. So if you take anything away from the earlier slides, whatever, there are so many resources for students. There's so many people who are just committed to their core for our students to be successful. I'm one of them. Our office is one of them, and there are so many others. But they need to learn how to utilize those resources. And so when a student says to you, hey, I'm really upset, or I'm having this problem with my roommate, or I'm struggling with this class, say to them, well, have you reached out for help? And if they don't know who to go to, come to our office. If it's an academic thing, I don't know a lot about the academic side, but I can connect you to someone who does. If it's a relationship situation, we're here to help. So please help them to take ownership and address those issues and utilize their resources. A lot of times I get calls from parents saying, I need to talk to you about my son or daughter, and they're having this issue or that issue. And I'm happy to listen, but one of the first things I'm going to say to you is, I said, it's great that you're advocating for your student, but they need to advocate for themselves. Here are the resources you need to point them to. Again, helping them to learn how to use help is really important. And using help is not a weakness. It is a strength. It is someone who is smart and bright and understands that there are resources available to them and how to activate those. So that is something we need to really encourage. Yeah, so that's super important. Empower them to address issues. I'll also mention I sometimes get parents who call and they'll say, "Oh my gosh, my daughter would just be so upset if she knew I was calling, but I felt like I needed to call." And that's fine. And my staff and I have had hundreds of those conversations in our careers, and I'm going to listen to that, and I'm gonna hear you out, because a FERPA I won't be able to really share much back, but I can provide maybe some advice, just in a general way. But I really encourage people not to do those secretive calls to our office or secretive calls to other offices. I say to people, isn't it better for a student to know that someone at home cares about the situation and there's someone here on campus that also cares about that situation? Having two people who care is better than having one. And so I really want you to consider that. I will challenge every parent who calls me and has that type of beginning to the conversation to do the same thing. We're all on the same side. We're on the side of our students. And so we want our students to know that, and hopefully just feeling supported by multiple people will help them do well. Encourage students to remain on campus, become part of the community. There are going to be times where people are going to want to rush home. They know what's familiar to them. They want to go home for that high school football game. That's fine. But high school's done. It's time to be involved in college stuff. And so encourage them to stay here when they can. Sometimes it's in those moments where there aren't a lot of people around, where you actually connect with someone and make the strongest bond. So really encourage people to stay on campus. We try to have events and try to do things for students, but sometimes it's also just good to have them have a quiet time, and learn how to use a weekend to study, and do some of the other important things that are necessary for students to be successful. So encourage people to stay on campus. I did mention a couple times Labor Day weekend and the breaks fall and spring are particularly lonely, so I don't encourage then, but I do generally say, hey, stay on campus, build those relationships here. Because they have relationships here doesn't mean those relationships end at home. But again, better to have a community of people of support than just one or two. I mentioned earlier, give students a chance to make decisions. Sometimes they're going to be good, sometimes they won't be, and that's okay. That's really what becoming an adult is all about. One of my colleagues, the director of Res Life, loves to say college is adulting 101. It's the first chance of like learning how to be an adult in an environment where the expectations are high for students to take responsibility for themselves. So allow them to make those decisions. Sometimes the best thing that a parent can do is when a student asks advice is say, well, what do you really think? Or what are you feeling? Sometimes one of the best pieces of advice that I've ever received is I talk to someone and they tell me what they're thinking. And then I might say to them, here's what I hear you're saying. Because sometimes they need that process, but let them make those decisions. I think this might be my last sort of nugget of information. Your student is going to change. They're going to be different because of this experience. So don't expect them to be exactly the same person they were before college. And I like to say that, and I add to that because otherwise, what's the point, right? We need our students to grow. This is a time of identity development. This is a time where they explore their passions. You know, your student may be like dead set that they want to be a nursing student, but they take a history class that just changes their world. Let them change, let them grow, let them give them that freedom to be able to explore. And again, I mean, that is the point of all this. We want them to leave our university at some point, leave housing in a year or maybe 2 years, a changed person. That's what we're here about. My last thing, I actually do have one more thing, and I say to people, parents in particular, keep calm and be a rock star. So it was right before the pandemic, so in like 2019 or so, that I was walking into my office. I'd come back from a meeting and there was a parent and a student sitting in the lobby. And I looked at them and I said, you know, does someone help you? And the parent said, yes, we need to talk to someone. And I said, well, you know, I'm the director, come and speak with me. And I started to welcome them into my office, and the parent stays seated at the desk. And I said to them, I said, oh, you know, you're welcome to come with us. And the parent said to me, no, I helped her get here, but she needs to talk to you on her own. She needs to, you know, advocate for herself. And it was just this wonderful moment. And realistically, it was great. The student heard her say that as well. But I looked at the parent and I said, gosh, you're a rock star. Again, happy to meet with people, but try to do your best to encourage students to seek solutions on their own, because at some point, fewer and fewer safety nets are going to be in place for them as they become an adult and the working life and all those other kind of things. So they need to figure that piece out. So try to keep calm and be a rock star. Try to help your student find and utilize the resources that are important that they learn how to use. You hear a lot of in these points of advice, a lot of repetition in some ways. Again, I will say 100,000 times, there are people to help students through just about everything that could potentially happen to them when they're at the university, and frankly, to celebrate the things that happen that are wonderful. So not always to focus on the bad, but I tell people, hey, when something great happens, when you score that really wonderful internship, tell us. Like, we are here to walk this path with you, good and bad. So thank you so much. Just have a great day. And of course, it wouldn't be appropriate if I didn't say go beach. Thanks so much. Look for other videos that we'll be providing as well. One on move-in and just sort of our staffing and sort of program models as well. Have a great day.